In the heart of a vast, ancient land, there was a small village named Willowbrook. This village was home to a brave and adventurous young woman named Eldoria. Eldoria had always been fascinated by the tales of the lost kingdom of Eldoria, a once great empire now shrouded in mystery and legend. One day, while exploring the attic of her grandmother's house, Eldoria stumbled upon an old leather-bound journal. The journal belonged to her great-grandfather, an explorer who had spent his life searching for Eldoria. Inside the journal was a map, marked with a route that led deep into the forbidden forest, rumored to be the gateway to the lost kingdom. Determined to fulfill her great-grandfather's dream, Eldoria decided to embark on the quest to find Eldoria. She packed her essentials, including the journal and the map, and set off early one morning, leaving a note for her family explaining her mission. As she entered the forbidden forest, Eldoria was both excited and nervous. The forest was dense and dark, with towering trees that seemed to whisper secrets to each other. She followed the map carefully, navigating through thick underbrush and crossing treacherous streams. Along the way, she encountered various challenges, including a pack of wild wolves and a rickety old bridge that barely held her weight. One evening, while setting up camp, Eldoria heard a rustling noise. She turned to see a small, peculiar creature watching her. It was a sprite named Loomis, who had lived in the forest for centuries. Loomis was curious about Eldoria's presence and decided to help her on her quest. Loomis guided Eldoria through the forest, helping her avoid dangers and leading her to hidden paths. They became fast friends, and Eldoria learned much about the forest and its magical inhabitants from Loomis. After several days of travel, they finally reached the edge of the forest and found themselves standing before a massive, ancient stone gate covered in vines. Eldoria and Loomis worked together to clear the vines and discovered an inscription on the gate. Using her great-grandfather's journal, Eldoria deciphered the inscription, which revealed the secret to opening the gate. With a rumbling sound, the gate slowly opened, revealing a breathtaking sight, the lost kingdom of Eldoria. The kingdom was a magnificent sight, with grand palaces, towering spires, and lush gardens, all preserved in a magical stasis. Eldoria and Loomis explored the kingdom, marveling at its beauty and discovering its hidden treasures. In the heart of Eldoria, they found a grand library filled with ancient scrolls and books, documenting the history and secrets of the kingdom. Eldoria realized that her great-grandfather's dream had been fulfilled. She spent several weeks in Eldoria, studying its history and learning its secrets. She recorded everything in a new journal, determined to share her discoveries with the world. When it was time to leave, Eldoria and Loomis made their way back to Willowbrook. The journey home was much easier with Loomis's guidance, and they arrived safely. Eldoria was welcomed as a hero in her village, and she shared the incredible story of Eldoria with everyone. Her discoveries brought new knowledge and prosperity to Willowbrook, and Eldoria became known as the greatest explorer of her time. And so, the legend of the lost kingdom of Eldoria was no longer a mystery, thanks to the bravery and determination of Eldoria and the friendship of Loomis. The tales of their adventure were told for generations, inspiring new explorers to seek out the wonders of the world.
Once upon a time, in a lush, green jungle, there lived a big, brown bear named Brutus. Brutus was known as the strongest animal in the jungle, but he wasn't always the kindest. He often used his strength to intimidate the other animals, taking their food and scaring them away from the best spots in the forest. One day, Brutus was walking through the jungle when he came across a group of animals, a monkey, a deer, a rabbit, and a bird, gathered around a tree. They were talking excitedly about the upcoming jungle festival, where all the animals would share stories, food, and play games together. Brutus snorted. "What's the point of a festival?" he growled. "I don't need anyone's help." I can get whatever I want by myself. The other animals looked at each other nervously. The monkey, who was very clever, decided to speak up. Brutus, the festival is not just about food or games. It's about friendship and working together. Even the strongest animal can't do everything alone. Brutus laughed. I'm stronger than all of you put together. I don't need friends. The deer, who was gentle and wise, added, strength is important, but so is kindness. When we work together, we can achieve more than any of us can alone. Brutus didn't believe them and walked away, thinking they were just trying to make him feel guilty. A few days later, a terrible storm hit the jungle. Trees were uprooted, and rivers overflowed, flooding many animals' homes. Brutus was caught in the storm too, and although he was strong, he couldn't fight against the power of nature. A huge tree fell and trapped his leg. He roared for help, but no one came. The storm was too fierce, and the other animals were busy protecting their own homes. As the storm began to calm down, Brutus realized he was in serious trouble. He couldn't move the heavy tree on his own, no matter how strong he was. Exhausted and scared, he began to cry out for help again, this time in desperation. The monkey, the deer, the rabbit, and the bird heard his cries. Even though Brutus had always been unkind to them, they decided to help. They gathered more animals from the jungle, elephants, tigers, even the tiny ants, and together, they worked to lift the tree and free Brutus. Brutus was astonished. Why did you help me? He asked, ashamed of how he had treated them. The deer smiled gently. Because, Brutus, we all live in this jungle together. Helping each other makes us all stronger. You may be strong, but there are some things that only kindness and teamwork can accomplish. Brutus nodded, realizing they were right. From that day on, he changed his ways. He still used his strength, but now, he used it to help others. He became the protector of the jungle, making sure everyone was safe and happy. And when the jungle festival finally came, Brutus was the guest of honor, celebrated not for his strength, but for his newfound kindness and willingness to work together with the other animals. The jungle was happier and more peaceful than ever, thanks to the lesson Brutus had learned, and so, the animals of the jungle lived together in harmony, always ready to lend a hand or a paw whenever it was needed.
Once upon a time, in a peaceful forest, there lived a wise old owl named Oliver. Oliver was known throughout the forest for his wisdom and calm demeanor. All the animals would come to him whenever they had a problem, and he always had the right advice to offer. In the same forest lived a young, energetic rabbit named Ruby. Ruby was full of life and always in a hurry. She wanted to do everything quickly and didn't like waiting for anything. If she saw a carrot, she would dash to it before thinking, and if she heard about a new adventure, she would rush into it without a plan. One day, Ruby heard from the other animals that there was a secret garden deep in the forest, filled with the most delicious vegetables and fruits. Eager to get there first, Ruby decided to go alone and quickly find the garden. She ran as fast as she could, jumping over rocks and ducking under branches, without paying attention to where she was going. After a while, she found herself in a part of the forest she had never seen before. The trees were taller, the bushes thicker, and there were no familiar paths. Ruby stopped, realizing she was lost. She looked around, but everything looked the same. Panic set in as she thought about all the stories she had heard about getting lost in the forest. She hopped from one place to another, trying to find her way back, but she only got more and more confused. Just as she was about to give up, she heard a soft hoot from above. Looking up, she saw Oliver the owl perched on a branch, watching her with his wise, calm eyes. Oliver!" Ruby cried. "I'm lost. I was trying to find the secret garden, but now I don't know where I am. Can you help me?" Oliver flew down to a lower branch, closer to Ruby. "Of course, Ruby," he said in his soothing voice. "But first, tell me, why were you in such a hurry?" "I wanted to get to the garden before anyone else," Ruby said. "I didn't want to wait, so I rushed ahead without thinking." Oliver nodded. "I see. But sometimes, being in a hurry can lead us to trouble. The forest is a big place, and it's easy to get lost if we don't pay attention to where we're going." Ruby looked down, realizing her mistake. "I understand now, Oliver. But what should I do? How can I find the garden, or even get back home?" Oliver smiled kindly. "The forest may seem confusing, but if you take your time and look carefully, you'll find your way. Sometimes, the path we need is right in front of us, but we can't see it when we're rushing." Oliver then offered to guide Ruby back to familiar territory. As they walked slowly through the forest, Oliver pointed out landmarks and paths that Ruby hadn't noticed before. He showed her how to recognize the direction by the position of the sun and how to use the trees and the sounds of the forest as guides. After a while, they arrived back at the part of the forest Ruby knew well. She felt relieved and grateful. "Thank you, Oliver," she said. "I've learned my lesson. I'll be more patient and careful from now on." Oliver nodded. "Patience is a valuable skill, Ruby. When we slow down, we can see things more clearly and avoid mistakes." Ruby smiled and hopped away, this time taking her time to enjoy the sights and sounds of the forest. She decided she would look for the secret garden again, but this time, she would plan her journey carefully and ask for help if she needed it, and so, Ruby became a wiser, more patient rabbit, and the other animals noticed the change in her. She still loved to run and explore, but now she did so with thoughtfulness and care, making her adventures all the more enjoyable. Oliver continued to watch over the forest, always ready to share his wisdom with those who needed it. And as for the secret garden, well, that's another story, perhaps for another day.
In a small village in India, the night of August 14, 1947, was filled with a buzz of anticipation. The villagers had gathered around a large banyan tree, eagerly listening to a radio broadcast. Among them was a young boy named Ravi. He was just 10 years old, but his eyes shone with the excitement and curiosity of someone much older. Ravi's grandfather, a frail yet spirited man, was a freedom fighter. He had spent years participating in protests, rallies, and movements led by great leaders like Mahatma Gandhi. Tonight, he was a beacon of knowledge and experience, narrating tales of valor and sacrifice to the eager villagers. "Tonight is a historic night," grandfather said, his voice trembling with emotion. "At midnight, India will finally be free from British rule. We will be an independent nation." Ravi could hardly contain his excitement. He had heard stories of the British Raj, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and the Salt March, but tonight felt different. It was as if he was about to witness history unfold right before his eyes. As the clock inched closer to midnight, the radio crackled to life with the voice of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first Prime Minister. He was delivering his famous Tryst with Destiny speech. "Long years ago we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom." The villagers erupted in cheers and tears of joy. The atmosphere was electric, filled with a sense of triumph and hope. Ravi watched as his grandfather wiped away a tear, his face a mix of pride and relief. "Does this mean we're free now, Dadaji?" Ravi asked, his eyes wide with wonder. "Yes, my dear," his grandfather replied, his voice choked with emotion. "We are free. We are free to shape our own destiny, to build a nation where every individual can live with dignity and respect." As dawn broke on August 15, 1947, the village, like the rest of the country, was alive with celebrations. The Indian tricolor was hoisted for the first time, and the national anthem echoed through the air. There was a sense of unity and purpose, a feeling that despite the challenges ahead, India would rise and shine. Years passed, and Ravi grew up with the stories of India's struggle for independence deeply ingrained in his heart. He understood the value of freedom and the responsibilities that came with it. Inspired by his grandfather's tales, he dedicated his life to serving the nation, contributing in his own way to its growth and development. Every year on August 15th, Ravi would gather his children and grandchildren, just as his grandfather had done, and recount the story of that historic night. He would remind them of the sacrifices made by countless individuals and the importance of preserving and cherishing the hard-earned freedom. And so, the legacy of that night of freedom lived on, passed down from one generation to the next, a reminder of the indomitable spirit and resilience of the Indian people.